Let us continue with prayer. Gracious God, bless us now as we gather here on this Sunday, celebrating the resurrection of your Son. May we know the power of his resurrection through your word, that we would be drawn closer to you, that we might be able to share your love with the world around us. May the thoughts and meditations of our hearts and minds be acceptable to you. Amen. There are a number of people in my life that I have met, some briefly, others I have known well and have had a big impact on my life. Certain individuals that have an unmistakable presence about them, that just exude God's grace and God's love. That was almost tangible. Like you could almost see it radiating off of them. Just the way they carried themselves, the way they spoke, the way they engaged the people around them, the depth of understanding and patience and care, the wisdom. The death of the Pope, many people have commented that Pope Francis had that type of a presence, and it didn't matter who you were, that when he looked upon you, that when he engaged you, there was the same demeanor of love and compassion that he just exuded. When I think of those people in my life, and at this moment, and there's been a number of them, my chaplain, both of the chaplains I had when I was at Susquehanna University, but the first chaplain was one of those people, and I was just so impressed, just touched by him. But each of those individuals had suffered in some way. That the people that I have met that have had that sense of peace, that sense of God's presence with them in a way that is just so undeniable, that they've been through something. That the reason why they have that presence about them is because not only have they experienced God's love and they exude that for others, they experience God's love, or they have had an experience in their life where they experience God's love in such a way that their experience of God's love was a powerful experience of the resurrection. That they've gone through death and resurrection. In some cases, literal death, that they've lost someone. I had discovered for my chaplain in college that he had lost his son at one point. And he was college age, and here he is a chaplain at a university for college age people. That when I heard that, his compassion, the way that he just looked upon you, you could see that the way he looked upon you as a college student was marked by that experience, that love, that depth of understanding, that deep compassion. That he had really gone through a great trial and had known the resurrection, and that had profound impact upon him and a profound impact on his ability to share that love with others. And there have been a number of people like that. There's a number of them, about enough to count on one hand, that really just jumped to mind for me. Martin Luther had a name for this. And I doubt that he came up with it himself, but it's through Luther's writings that I'm most aware of this. He called it spiritual stigmata. That there are spiritual stigmata is a mark. A spiritual stigmata is a spiritual mark. That Martin Luther basically said when you've encountered death and resurrection, that it leaves, and especially that resurrection, it leaves a spiritual stigmata, a mark upon you, that it's healed, but there's a scar nonetheless, that never really goes away, and that it's visible if you look. If you look. And each of those individuals that I think of that had that kind of a presence about them, they had spiritual stigmata. It makes sense. It makes sense to me. Why do I bring all this up? In our gospel lesson today, we hear of Thomas. And I have to tell you, since my days in seminary, in fact, the first sermon I wrote in seminary, well, no, it's this second sermon I wrote in seminary. It was on this text for my homiletics preaching class. So from seminary on, there's a part of me that has railed against the narrative of doubting Thomas. Don't be a doubting Thomas. You know, blessed are those, do you believe because you have seen? Blessed are those who haven't seen. And yes, that is true. It is a blessing to believe and to not have seen. Absolutely. Jesus says it's true. But if Jesus was really coming down hard on Thomas, if Jesus really was angry with Thomas, if Thomas is the bad example, don't be a doubting Thomas, would Jesus have come back a week later? Think about that. If he didn't love Thomas. But no, Jesus comes back. So I've always railed against that. But I think there's some wisdom there for Thomas. And not just, I won't see unless I believe, but believing based on exactly what Thomas is looking for. Because Thomas does not say, I've got to see Jesus. Thomas doesn't say, well, I've got to touch him to feel that he's real. Thomas is very specific. I want to touch the marks on his hands and his feet. I want to touch the sun. I want to touch the marks, the stigmata from the cross itself. That he isn't just there. It's not just an image of him, but that he is actually raised from the cross itself. That not only is he raised, that none of it was a dream, that it's all true. That he actually did die on the cross and he actually is risen from the grave. Show me the stigmata. And I got it. And for Thomas to demand that, I mean, the peer pressure had to be great. Anybody know what FOMO is? Am I saying it right? Fear of missing out. Fear of missing out. He had to be going through, like this is like the greatest FOMO moment right here. Everybody's like, hey, Jesus is risen. You missed it. Man, I missed it? Come on. Fear of missing out. But he's like, no, I got to see. I'm not just going to go along. I got to know that the resurrection really is real. We live in a society where we're played on. Society comes to us and says, hey, here's this beverage that will make you feel better. Hey, here's this. Hey, do this. Hey, new exercise routine, new beauty, whatever, wake-up routine, new whatever. Drive this car. Can a car spark an emotion? Fear of missing out. It's just dangled in front of us. And we're made all these promises that just to me sound often a little too good to be true. That the real article, the real inspirational things, the people who have that real sense of peace that everybody else wants, there's stigmata there. That I think we can take an example from Thomas, that we too should look for the spiritual stigmata around us. That we're not just looking for, sunshine and butterflies. We're looking for sunshines and butterflies where there's actually been a storm. Where there's real healing, where there's real resurrection. That you can touch the marks of the cross. And this can be tricky because, I have met folks who at first, I have met folks who have impressed me more at first than after the fact. That at first they tried just a little too hard to be inspirational, to be an example, to have the answers. But then as I got to know them, that they were trying a bit too hard to kind of make up a lot of those inspirational voices out there in this society around us. Are like that. And it's not that some of these voices that I've heard, some of the folks that I've met like this haven't been through their difficulties. They have. But it's that, again, they don't actually show the marks. Like they don't really look at the marks. They'll admit, well, yeah, I went through this, but if you do this, and if you be strong like me, and if you do this, you can be like me, and you can overcome, and you're not going to be a victim. You're only a victim if you choose to be, and if you be strong. And that's a bit different than, look at the wound, it's still there. That's saying, I was wounded, but see, my wounds have disappeared. That's different than spiritual stigmata. Anybody who has been wounded and shows themselves to have wounds that have disappeared, I wonder if they're still running away from their wounds to a certain extent. And if they're portraying that to others, it's probably not. They might, their wounds may become spiritual stigmata at some point, but they're not quite there yet. The fact of the matter is, there are signs of the resurrection all around us. But to find the genuine article, to see the greatest miracles in our midst, maybe take a page from Thomas here. Look for those spiritual stigmata. Amen.